Millions perish yearly due to pollution. New data on pollution shows the air we breathe can be lethal. A new report from the World Health Organization says that 7 million people die annually from exposure to polluted air. The organization says 9 out of 10 people everywhere are exposed to dangerous pollutants. The WHO says that 34% of all pollution-related deaths are due to heart disease and 20% are from stroke. The rest consist of various lung-related conditions including pneumonia, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and lung cancer. Concerningly, many are linked to air inside the home. Around 3.6 million deaths are connected to exposure from indoor air pollutants such as fumes from cooking fires and stoves. The most vulnerable are children under 5 where pneumonia is the biggest risk to life, women working in smoky kitchens, and people who work outside. The WHO says outdoor air pollution in cities and rural settings is caused by industry and energy supply, transportation, waste management, dust, farming practices, and household energy. Regional estimates put pollution fatalities at over 4 million in West Pacific and Southeast Asia. That number is around 1 million in Africa. In the Middle East and the North Africa region, 500,000 pass away due to pollution. That's around the same for Europe. While in the Americas, 300,000 perish annually due to exposure. The WHO says that many of these deaths, as many as 25% of all child mortalities, can be prevented by cleaning up the environment. Here's more stories on pollution.
There's plastic in your water. A new study shows plastic has not only been polluting the seas and oceans, but also most of the world's tap water. Scientists tested water samples from a dozen countries on 5 different continents and found that 83% contained microscopic plastic fibers. The US had the highest contamination rate at 94%, while Europe fared better at 72%. The microscopic fragments are believed to be from clothes, plastic waste, tire dust, microbeads, and paint that have been flushed into water systems. Synthetic fibers shed from clothes and carpets have also been known to contaminate the air and eventually make it into waterways. Microplastics have been known to contain toxic chemicals, which could be released into the body when ingested. Many studies have explored the impact of microscopic plastic particles on marine life, but none so far focused directly on human health. With the current state of Earth's plastic pollution, though, somebody had better get on it.
Ancient archaeological site facing pollution threat. One of the world's oldest, and perhaps most important underwater archaeological spots, is at threat from pollution. The Sakaktun's cave system is located on the Yucatan Peninsula, south of Cancun on the Mexican coast. It is believed to be the world's largest underwater cave system. Recently, researchers found a network of 248 sinkholes spanning 216 miles there. Divers also found 9,000-year-old human remains, as well as bones from ancient elephants, extinct bears, and giant sloths. Archaeologists say the cave system may be under threat from pollution. Many tourists use sinkholes for snorkeling, and a nearby coastal highway has been known to break apart and fall into the sinkholes.
That's the legacy of nitrogen. The dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico isn't likely to shrink anytime soon, and could even persist for decades according to a new study. Dead zones are low oxygen areas in bodies of water that are harmful to marine life and can lead to massive algal blooms. The hypoxic zones are fed by nitrogen fertilizer, which flows through waterways across America's Corn Belt and into the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf Hypoxia Action Plan currently calls for a reduction in nitrogen runoffs in order to shrink the dead zone from 5,000 to 1,950 square kilometers by 2035. Legacy nitrogen that has been accumulating underground and in the groundwater also feeds into the Gulf. Even if strict measures were to fully stem annual runoffs, it could take more than 30 years for the legacy nitrogen to clear up and for the Gulf to recover. Improving water quality in the Gulf of Mexico requires certain changes in agricultural practices. More careful application of fertilizers, reduced tillage, and cultivating plants that can stop chemicals from leaching into water are just some methods that can curb nitrogen pollution.
Kaboom! It's chilly in here. Did you know U.S. researchers once devised a scenario to cool the planet with explosives? In 1992, researchers at the National Academy of Science published geoengineering options that included artillery shells containing UV reflective alumina and 16-inch naval rifles. The Academy's Committee on Science, Engineering, and Public Policy drafted this, and it involves tons of firepower. Specifically, the plan would have seen these massive one-ton shells half filled with alumina and half filled with dispersal mechanisms and other materials. The cost? An estimated $10,000 per round, and there's lots of rounds. The plan would see 40 10-barrel stations located on empty land areas or at sea due to noise, firing 5 shots per hour for 24 hours a day for 250 days of the year. In other words, 400 barrels lobbing 48,000 artillery shells per day for 250 days of the year. The scenario envisaged the naval rifle firing a projectile containing alumina into the stratosphere. Once there, it would disperse the substance. Alumina, like sulfur dioxide, can also reflect ultraviolet light. And how long was this for? 40 frickin' years. That's because, according to the 1992 plan, the estimated stratospheric dust lifetime is 2 years. The whole aim of the 40-year scenario was to continually eliminate 1 trillion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, but the estimated annual cost was $100 billion, and that's 1992 money. Dirty old birds show changes in U.S. air pollution. Researchers analyzed the amount of soot on birds in museums from Rust Belt cities to track air pollution in the U.S. over the last 135 years. A new paper shows the discoloration of birds in museum collections can be used to estimate the amount of black carbon air over time. Researchers sampled over 1,000 birds collected over the last 135 years to find out and quantify the effects of soot in the air in Rust Belt cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. To track changes in sootiness, the scientists photographed the birds and measured the light reflected off of them. They found that older birds were dirtier and new birds were cleaner. The team discovered that soot on birds closely tracks the use of coal over time. Researchers also pointed out that even though newer birds are cleaner, it doesn't necessarily mean U.S. air is less polluted. Many of the pollutants released into the atmosphere today aren't as easily tracked as soot.
Great Pacific garbage patch is out of control. Here's some uplifting news. Results of a 3-year study, beginning in 2015, suggest the Great Pacific garbage patch could be 16 times larger than previous estimates. With 30 vessels and a C-130 Hercules aircraft, researchers cataloged a sample of over 1 million pieces of plastic, mostly microplastics, less than 0.5 centimeters in diameter. Scientists say there are more than 79,000 tons of plastic, equal to 500 jumbo jets, in a 1.6 million square kilometer area around 3 times the size of France, of the North Pacific Ocean. Researchers found plastic bottles, containers, packaging straps, lids, ropes, and fishing nets among the other refuse that have been collecting for decades. As the plastics break down into smaller pieces, they threaten marine life that can eat and die from them.